What's good, YouTubers and YouTubers? This is JB Sports, back again with another one. Got some breaking news in the sport of boxing. In the lightweight division, as we know, the number one fighter at 135 pounds is Devin, the Dream Haney, who has a record of 30 wins, 0 losses, 15 KOs. He's coming off a controversial win over former unified champion at 135 pounds, multi-division champion, perennial pound-for-pound fighter, Vasil Lomachenko, aka the Matrix. Now he is a free agent. His contract ran out with Lou DiBella in Top Rank Boxing, as his last several fights were broadcast on ESPN and ESPN Plus. He was able to grow his name, build his brand, and he is one of the top names in the sport of boxing. Make no mistake about it, Devin Haney's career has definitely grown. Now, ever since the victory over Lomachenko, people have been speculating what's going to be his next move. Who will he share the ring with next? He's got a plethora of options. He could stay at 135 and defend his belts. He has a mandatory in the WBC to take on multi-division world champion, another guy that's in the top 10 pound for pound, one of the brightest stars in boxing, Shakur Stevenson. He could move up to 140. As he's undisputed at 135, he can say, my work here is done at 135. Let me move up, because my body has been calling. Your body's calling. That old R. Kelly song, his body has been calling and telling him to move up, as he's been at 135 pounds for the entirety of his career. And he could move up to 140, as the WBC president, Mauricio Suleiman, came out the other day and said that he's got two options in the WBC. He can stay at 135 and defend his belts against number one mandatory contender in the WBC, Shakur Stevenson, or he can move up and challenge the WBC champion at 140 pounds, Regis Prograis, aka Rougarou. Or he could just ignore what Suleiman is talking about, and defend his other belts at 135, that being the WBA, IBF, and WBO, and take on Vasil Lomachenko in the rematch. He could do that. Or he could move up to 140 pounds and take on the lineal champion at 140 pounds, the WBO junior welterweight champion, Teofimo Lopez, aka Mr. Takeover. So he got a plethora of options, but my source is telling me that he is indeed going to move up to 140, and he will take on WBC junior welterweight champion, Regis Prograis, aka Rougarou. And that fight, in all likelihood, will take place in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia. They're looking at 2 locations in Saudi Arabia, and the fight is going to definitely take place in either October or November. Now, Haney wants the fight to take place in October. Regis Prograis, who right now is out the country with his family, enjoying himself, enjoying the fruits of his labor, is looking for the fight to take place in November. So we will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. Now, this is going to be a domino effect, not only for Devin Haney, but for fighters that have been mentioned to take on Devin Haney in his next fight, that being Shakur Stevenson and Vasil Lomachenko. As Shakur Stevenson is making moves, him and his team, they have not only set themselves up to be the mandatory in the WBC, but they have also petitioned the WBO to become the number one contender for Haney's WBO belt. So if Haney does move up and fight Regis Prograis, and my source is telling me that's what's going to happen next for Haney, that means that the belts will become vacant in the WBC and possibly the WBO. And in the WBC, Shakur Stevenson is actually not even ranked number 1 in the WBC. He's ranked number 2. Lomachenko is ranked number 1. But he is the mandatory, so he is next in line. So if Haney which I'm hearing that he is going to do this, move up to 140, that WBC belt will become vacant. And my source is telling me that the WBC would then order Shakur Stevenson to take on Vasily Lomachenko for the vacant WBC lightweight title. And I'm also hearing that the WBO is likely to make him the mandatory in their organization. And guess who's number 2 in the WBO? That's Vasily Lomachenko. So what I'm hearing is that we could see Shakur Stevenson versus Vasily Lomachenko for the vacant WBC and the vacant WBO lightweight titles. That would be a mega matchup. In all likelihood, that fight will take place on ESPN Plus or ESPN pay-per-view. That will be Shakur Stevenson's first fight on pay-per-view. He will be in the main event. You know, he will be, I wouldn't say he would be the A side. I would say Lomachenko would be the A side, because Lomachenko was on the pay-per-view with Haney, which did 150,000 pay-per-view. He was the B side in that, or maybe it wasn't no A side in that. Maybe both of those guys were considered B-side fighters, but I don't know what the case was. All I know is it was Haney versus Lomachenko. So Haney's name came first. So I would assume that he was basically the A-side in that situation. And with Lomachenko coming off that fight, and that fight was viewed by many boxing insiders in the boxing industry to be a successful pay-per-view. They lowered the price. They didn't have it at like $80. I think they had that fight at like around $50, $49.99 if I'm not mistaken, or even as low as $39.99 in that neighborhood. And it did $150K. And based on what each guy made, the guarantees that each guy got going into that fight, and the money that was made off the pay-per-view and the gate, and the fight being a sellout, the fight was a successful event for Top Rank Boxing. With all that being said, Shakur Stevenson would take on Lomachenko as the B-side, in my opinion. And that fight will be for the vacant WBC and WBO titles. Now, Teofimo Lopez, who's the recognized #1 fighter at 140 pounds, from what I'm hearing is Top Rank Boxing, who promotes Teofimo Lopez, is looking to put Teofimo Lopez back on Heisman Trophy ceremony night. You know, the Top Rank and ESPN for the last several years have put on a boxing card right after the Heisman Trophy ceremony, and Teofimo Lopez has headlined a card previously, and they'll be looking to do that again at the end of 2023. And the name that I'm prominently hearing to take on Teofimo Lopez is Jose Ramirez. So we will see Teofimo Lopez, who's a lineal junior welterweight champion, WBO welterweight champion, will take on top 5 in the WBO, top 5 lightweight, Jose Ramirez. Now that style is a style that Teofimo Lopez can thrive against, in my opinion. He's a similar fighter as Josh Taylor was. Josh Taylor is a come-forward fighter, and that is a recipe for disaster, fighting a guy that is athletic, and a guy that's a great counterpuncher, and a guy that has fast hands, fast twitch muscles, in Teofimo Lopez. So I look for Teofimo Lopez to thrive in that type of opponent, bring it with that type of opponent and that type of style. I expect Teofimo Lopez to thrive against. Jose Ramirez is a similar style. Now, he's not exactly the same as Josh Taylor. I actually think Josh Taylor is a little bit more technical when he's bringing the pressure. He tends to be a little bit more defensively responsible coming forward. Jose Ramirez, he's like a bull in a china shop. I'm not saying he's just coming in with his chin up, no defense, trying to take 2 punches and land 3 punches. I'm not saying he's like that, but I think he's coming in a straight line. Very little head movement, but he's bringing a lot of pressure. He's a great body puncher. He does a good job of going to the body, and I believe he'll be much more comfortable at 140 pounds than Josh Taylor was when he fought Teofimo Lopez. I believe Josh Taylor looked very sluggish against Teofimo Lopez. Not to take nothing away from Teofimo Lopez, but Josh Taylor seemed to be, as a fighter that stayed at 140, one fight too long. He should have moved up to 147. He had been mentioning that in his last couple of fights about moving up to 147 and possibly taking on WBO welterweight champion Terrence Bud Crawford. But Top Rank had much more lucrative, much more sensible, much more available fights at 140 pounds. So he stayed at 140 pounds and took on Jack Catterall. Didn't look great in that fight. A lot of people thought he lost that fight. And then he took on Teofimo Lopez and got dominated. After round 4, Teofimo Lopez took over the fight, man. It was close in the first 4 rounds. I think I had it 2-2. But after that, man, Teofimo Lopez showed to be the superior fighter. So Josh Taylor is now looking to move up to 147. Top Rank Boxing don't have a lot of fighters at 147, so it'll be interesting to see what type of matchup he gets in the welterweight division. So we will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. But Devin Haney, Devin the Dream Haney, will be taking on Regis Prograis. Now, Prograis, with the initial offer that Matchroom Boxing, who's going to put on this event, offered Regis Prograis, he was not happy with the money. He said he's the champion, and what they're offering ain't going to get it done. He's not going to sign a contract for that amount of money. Evidently, Matchroom Boxing went over there to the Middle East. As we know, the Saudi Arabia is the home of the oil. They got deep pockets. They got oil money. They was able to give Matchroom Boxing the bag, and Matchroom Boxing is able to put on that event down there. They was able to satisfy Regis Prograis' monetary demands, and that fight is definitely on and popping for either October or November of 2023. So we will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. Now, a lot of people gonna be saying that Devin Haney is ducking. They're gonna say, "Ah, man, he ain't want no smoke with Shakur Stevenson, man. He knows Shakur Stevenson will watch him. He ain't trying to see Shakur Stevenson." Shakur Stevenson petitioned the WBC. Now, Haney people would say, look, we offered him a 75-25 split, but he ain't want to accept it. Of course, he's not going to accept the initial offer. That'd be asinine. ASA 10, ASA 11, and ASA 12. Why would he do that? That guy's one of the biggest names in the sport of boxing. He got a huge following in Newark, New Jersey. He's one of the biggest stars under Top Rank Boxing. He's a pound-for-pound fighter. So he's petitioning the WBC not only to be the mandatory, but he's petitioning the WBC to get a 50-50 split. And I doubt if he gets a 50-50 split, but I damn sure don't think he's going to end up with no 75-25 split. More than likely, it'll end up like a 60-40 split or maybe a 70-30 split. So at the end of the day, he's going to be making more money than he would have made if he'd accepted that original and initial offer from Devin Haney. So we will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. Interesting developments, but Devin Haney is definitely sitting in the catbird seat. He's had a plethora of options, a plethora of different scenarios that he could definitely seek, but he has decided, him and his team, to take on WBC junior welterweight champion Regis Prograis, who did not look good in his last fight against Danilo Zorrilla. That fight was boring, as Zorrilla was jab, get out the way, jab, get out the way, jab, get out the way. When Regis Prograis, who did not do a good job at all of cutting off the ring, tried to engage with him, he smothered him and grabbed him, held on. It was just a horrible fight to watch. It's a damn shame that that fight took place in Regis Prograis' hometown of New Orleans, Louisiana. But the fans seemed to not boo him. I ain't see a lot of booing, and they cheered him when he talked about not putting on for him. He was disappointed in his performance, but they still cheered him, so there's a lot of support. Think about if you're a New Orleans favorite, whether it be the New Orleans Saints or New Orleans Pelicans, they stick by you through thick and thin. They support you. It's definitely true love by the fans of New Orleans, man. They're not gonna boo you, man. They figure that you one of theirs. He's homegrown. They're gonna always support him. They're not gonna ever talk down on him in any scenario or make it look like he's not doing well in their eyes. So they did not boo him. And that performance that he put on versus Zorrilla was definitely boo-worthy, but they didn't do it. But that just lets you know that New Orleans have some of the best fans in the world. So we will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. Very interesting developments in the lightweight division and junior welterweight division. Now the head honcho of 135 pounds, the face of boxing in my opinion, the cash cow of the sport, Tank Davis, was released from jail last week, and a lot of people was thinking that he could be a name that would be mentioned to take on the undisputed lightweight champion Devin Haney, but I don't see that happening at all, because from what I'm hearing, Tank Davis will be coming back in December, and I'm hearing that if Pitbull Cruz defeats Giovanni Santiago, which is going to be the co-main event for Errol Spence Jr. versus Chance Crawford, he will be the likely opponent for Tank Davis in December, and that fight will definitely be on Showtime pay-per-view. Now, they have not locked down a venue. They're looking at several different options. He could go back to the ATL and fight. He could go back to the East Coast and fight, or that fight could take place like the first fight took place on the West Coast, which the first fight took place at Crypto.com Arena in Los Angeles, California. The rematch could take place either in LA or maybe even Las Vegas. So we will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. Follow me on Facebook, Gerard Briscoe. Like, share, and subscribe to JB Sports, the man, the myth, the legend. And I holla.